Hello, Michael.
Hi,
Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. We are very excited already, and especially Dustin is very excited since a few days. And not too long ago, we spoke with Christian Freiner from Figu. It was for my German podcast channel. It was very interesting. He told us a lot about himself and also how he came across Billy Meier and what his motivations were to dive deep into, the topic. So today, we would love to hear from you, your story. If you don't mind, please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got dragged into the Billy Meier universe.
Okay, I'd be glad to. I walked into a bookstore in Los Angeles in 1979, and the first photo book was facing me. It's different than this one, but the first photo book was on a shelf in this bookstore. I walk in, I look at it, and I'd always been interested in this topic of outer space, and flying saucers was the term that I grew up with in the 40s and 50s and 60s and what have you. So I got the book. I read through it. I kept on going through to glean every bit that I could from it at the time. That was in 1979. It wouldn't be until some years later in 1986 that I would walk into a little cafe in a town called Sedona in Arizona, which is like the mecca for all things UFO and paranormal and what have you. A lot of silliness, but a lot of interesting things too. I was in a cafe. There was one other guy in the whole place sitting, away from me at a distance, and beckoned him over. I was there with a girlfriend at the time and my daughter, and we got to talking, and this, subject of UFOs, of course, came up, and then Billy Meier's name came up, and he said to me something about the contact notes or contact reports. Had I read them? And I said, no, I don't know what that is. And he says, well, in the book, you see these paragraphs, where the extraterrestrials are speaking. And I said, yeah, I remember that. He said, well, there are, about 1,800 pages of that conversational content. And when you come back to LA and you come up and, visit me, I'll give you copies of the whole thing. I said, great. So indeed, I obtained from this guy 1,800 pages, and I read and read and read over a period of many months, and I stashed stuff under my bed, these 100-page blocks of poorly translated but still understandable English translation of the original German. And then it would be in 1988 that I opened a local newspaper and saw what was a new discovery at the time from Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, where they announced the finding that the ozone damage was connected to atomic bomb testing and all this. And I reading the percentages in the article, and I'm going, well, I already know this. How could I know this already? And a little light bulb went off. I reached under the bed. I pulled out the first 1,800 pages, and there, 1975, they're talking about the ozone damage and the atomic testing, and also mentioning in there that Billy already knew about this in the 50s. Now, at this time, I didn't have access to the earlier translations of his information from the 50s and 40s. So I'm going, well, this is pretty interesting. And then it would be within a couple of years after that, there was an article about the connection between extraction of petroleum and natural gas. Professor Paul Siegel, I think, from Stanford University in California, had, I think he was the one who made the correlations of that. The other guy was Michael McElroy from Harvard, that the Plejaren wanted Billy to contact, and he did, but the guy never wrote him back. Well, anyhow, this guy had published this article about this connection, and I went, wait a minute, I know about that. And sure enough, 1976, Billy was told about that. And so I was really now realizing that this was about something actually far more important than UFOs. The UFO part of this, it's fascinating. It's the eye candy. It's what draws people into it. It's the least important part because there's nothing we can do with or about UFOs, terrestrial or extraterrestrial, other than to go, oh, wow, that's interesting. It's real. It isn't. And I started to realize this And back in the 90s, there's more correlations about there was more information that came through the New York Times about the ozone damage had allowed ultraviolet to come through that was killing off microorganisms in the atmosphere and, the waters and seas and what have you, the earth. And so it started to become quickly apparent to me that there was something far more profound going on. And I slowly began to make notes about these things. And then somewhere around 2000 or 2002, other people were noticing these things because I published probably around 2000. I may have published some of these things and showing the correlations. And then even a skeptic, a guy who turned it into a skeptic in India, he's starting to help prove the authenticity of the Meier case through the scientific information. So I call this the higher standard of proof. Look, we have absolute certainty of the authenticity of the photos. Meier's never faked anything. And yet, people will still be arguing about it because they don't understand. They don't know, they don't understand what evidence is and preponderance of evidence and all sorts of things. Even being able to take what a layman like myself can understand about photography and all these other factors that are involved in the Meier case, you can reason your way through to the authenticity. And then we have people like, a former U.S. astronaut who authenticated the photos. We have a video with him saying, oh, yes, this man in Switzerland, he's meeting with extraterrestrials. His photos, they're authentic. They're the real thing. Why do people call it a hoax? And then I was interrogated over a 3-month period by a guy who was a former top supervisor and investigator for the United States Air Force Office of Special Investigation and Department of Defense. Guy sitting at the top of investigators calls me out of the blue, 2017, in a January morning. Do you represent the Billy Meier case? Yeah. You want to talk about it? Sure. Are you sure? I said, well, yeah, why? I think it's a hoax. Still want to talk about it? Yeah. 3 months. This guy calls me every weekend and we go through. It was great. I loved it because the guy, he wouldn't tell me anything other than his first name. I didn't find out who he was until August of that year. And then he said, I'm an investigator and I want to talk about this. My name's Joe. And the difference between people in ufology and a guy like that who knows what he's talking about, who understands evidence and how to vet it. This is why ufology, UAPs, all this stuff, none of the people that I know about that I've seen who go online and are blabbing and all the rest of the stuff, they don't know what they're talking about. They simply don't. People like Lou Elizondo, who's a deliberate disinformation agent, I called him out as soon as I found out about him. I could tell. And I'll always tell the truth and I'll never lie. And so I asked him online, okay, you tell the truth. What's the truth of the Billy Meier case? Lou Elizondo wouldn't answer. And then I keep hitting away. I get a video filmed by a guy named Sean Cahill, former Navy intelligence or whatever. He's in a car or a truck or something or other. And in the background, I hear my video calling out Lou Elizondo. And then Sean's got the phone. He tilts it, and there's Lou Elizondo in the front seat, smiling and giving me a thumbs up. People don't understand in the so-called ufology field how badly they are being taken. You asked me a question, and I've run off into this whole other direction because this is the kind of thing that drives me crazy. If people who are interested in this topic could grasp the authenticity of the Meier contacts, all the rest of the stuff, all the rest of the footage and photos, very interesting, great. Some's real, some isn't, most is secret military, some is from the people under the earth, etc. But what is the reason? No one in ufology who even knows about the Meier case ever says, well, what's the reason for these Meier contacts 80 years running? Why would they contact guys? Don't you people understand it's not about UFOs, it's about our future survival. And it's all there, free, right there. You can understand. You start understanding that the reason they gave all this prophetic information is to establish beyond a shadow of a doubt a legal standard of proof, copyrights, that this man knows this information, these events, these discoveries, before they occur. Sometimes not only years, but decades earlier. And if all of these good, well-intentioned folks, most of whom don't have any background, either professional or educationally trained or experiential, in research and logic and thinking and what is evidence and how do you vet it, they're going to be chasing lights in the sky while the bombs are dropping on them. And I mean it literally. So this is why, you know, people stopped inviting, not that I'm going making public presentations during this period, but they stopped inviting me to maybe 10 years ago or so, for the most part, or more, to make presentations, because I would call out the people who were there presenting as liars. The last event I did maybe 3 years ago, I think, called Contact in the Desert. That was the last real big event I was invited. And I put up a big screen with the names of all the people in ufology that I considered to be liars and frauds, and a lot of them were lecturing at this event. And I would tell it to them to their face, because these people, in my opinion, for whatever they think their motivation is, they are harming humankind. They suck up the bandwidth because it's sensationalized. None have one piece of independently authenticated, verifiable extraterrestrial manufactured evidence. None. Stephen Greer, total BS, pumps it out. Now, he knows certain things that are true. He said certain things that are true, but he has no evidence for all of this nonsense about ambassador trainings. You come out and spend $700 to learn how to be an ambassador to extraterrestrial. Nobody talks to him. He's not a contactee. So you can spend hundreds of dollars to go shine your flashlight in the sky at night to try to get aliens on demand. That's the joke that has been made out of this entire field. If this is real, and this is where I get, look, the confirmed existence of and contact with space traveling extraterrestrials would be the single most important development, true story, whatever, in all of science and human history. And instead, we get every fraudulent, phony, or useless bit of information, photos, and all this stuff, so people can go, ooh, ah, float their theories, feel important, and do absolutely nothing for themselves or their countrymen, their world citizens, for future survival. Billy Meier has long foretold what is coming. And of course, Daniel, as you know, coming to Europe, coming to America, we're going to be utterly destroyed here in time. It won't be tomorrow, but it's coming. And the people that are fascinated with this field think it's entertainment. This isn't meant to entertain us. It's meant to open our thinking that we might realize that we are in deep trouble. There are civilizations that didn't get past this period of development, this nuclear age thing. There are civilizations that destroyed themselves through overpopulation, as we're doing it now. Meier, 80 years of contacts, 25 attempts on his life. And then there's all these people running around babbling about stuff. What do you do? So, you know, you asked a question, I'm sure I've taken it outside of the original framework, but this is the core of this. This is our future survival. And we should stop with the peripheral stuff and demand the truth. And for, you know, I'll jump to one more thing, because since you haven't shut me up yet, you know, we were talking about with Dustin about the photographs I discovered in the storage unit in Moab, Utah, 2020. Dustin's got duplicates of them. A UFO piloted by Asket, one of Meier's early contact people, second one actually. And then from 1981, these photos verified, I got them to a Kodak guy, 1980s, a then top secret stealth aircraft. These, Dustin, maybe you guys will show them, I don't know, but the UFOs basically hovering, moving around a little, the stealth planes coming all over the place, coming in and going out. no hostility, no attack, no aggression. I had left a message for Representative Andre Carson in the U.S., who had some subcommittee on, what is it called? Intelligence Subcommittee on intelligence, counter espionage, counterintelligence, counterproliferation, whatever. And I get a call because I simply left a voice message. Oops, there we go. I leave a voice message for this guy. I don't expect to hear back from them. I get this is one of the, amazing photographs here, supposedly taken around the Groom Lake area, 1981. We have extensive information on my blog, on Vayfly blog, because my webmaster, Melissa, dug into this quite a bit. We know who the test pilot was. We've got nice enlargements of this stealth, and it matches the original stealth. And this plane had camouflage on the top of it. I mean, there may even be a couple other planes hidden within these photos and other artifacts. We've got a couple people, Melissa, and there's a guy in England. They're delving into this. Here's the point in the whole thing. I get a call back from a national security advisor in America who says, send us these photos you're talking about. So I send her digital copies. And I'm waiting. She said, well, I've passed them up with chain, to this House Intelligence Committee, blah, 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 blah. They censored them. They never mentioned them. They won't tell anybody about it. Why? Because the entire American phony warmongering narrative of a threat from these objects, this phenomenon, everything's now phenomenon, UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. That's not phenomena so much. That's an unidentified object, except it's been identified. The American government sits on this because it's more profitable to get a phony like Lua Elizondo, who's an intelligence disinformation specialist, and Chris Mellon in the government, 12 years or more in the defense industry, to talk about a threat and the need to protect ourselves against whatever this threat from this phenomenon may be. We know there's no threat, not from these folks, and no threat yet from any other intelligences that may or may not be under or above the earth. So our government is lying to promote more war, more weapons, more destruction, and nobody makes a peep about it. So, shortly after I did a big interview for this show Redacted, which is actually out of Portugal. It's a big, show on YouTube and Rumble. He's moving off of YouTube soon. Then suddenly YouTube starts taking off a video here and a video there until my channel's taken down altogether. What was it about? COVID information. I won't go into what that information was, except to say came from the Meier case. And so they found a reason to take my channel down. But that was right after my first appearance on Redacted, which now has well over, 525,000 views, and another interview, another 240,000 views. So people want to know about the Meier material, clearly. But in America, the government doesn't want people to know. You're supposed to chase UAP and UFO and listen to people who know nothing of significance, nothing, unless they're reading this material. So I think, I've taken your question to whole other places, but it's so important that you, where you are in your country, with your audience, you people know about this. Otherwise, what's coming, it's coming, and it will either take people greatly by surprise, or we can be somewhat prepared. And the key now, in my opinion, is to take this material, to study Meier's teaching. It's not even just it's a teaching of this universal creation, and to create real nice, healthy, mutually interdependent communal relationships to support each other. You don't have to go out in the street and start throwing stones at people. Please don't do that. But to learn how to be helpful to each other, because everything will become far more difficult. So It started for me in 1979, walking into a bookstore.
That is amazing.
Yeah, you already answered the majority of my questions when you spoke, but that's all right. That's all right. You said it's not really about the UFOs and if they're UFOs and stuff like that, and
No.
all of those pictures of it. But to be perfectly honest, I find the story of Billy Meier, the story around Billy Meier, very interesting. But I am very skeptical, and I think that is because of the many pictures I have seen that are a bit or very controversial. For example, the dinosaurs and the wedding cake UFO and or the laser pistol with the girls and stuff. So for somebody that has never heard about Billy Meier before and wants to dive deep into it, I think these are just my 2 cents. It's not a good start because he's confronted with a lot of controversy and pictures like that, like the dinosaurs and people saying these are fake and these are debunked, sure. Right?
Let me. This is great that you're bringing this up, Daniel. Here's the thing. The first attempt on Billy Meier's life is, I think, something over 40 years ago, before everybody knew about him. But people knew. There were people who were learning about what he was doing. He had taken lots and lots of photos, which were in an album and were stolen. These are never seen. They're 50s and 60s photos. Some survived, a dozen. Okay, so it starts to occur that as he comes forward publicly, and this is important for people to understand, because we live in a world now where there are, more and more younger people who do not have any reference point for what I will call reality. Everything comes through this two-dimensional medium, and we think we know things because it's online and because so-and-so said so, including me. If you want, I don't care. But this is where we get to it. So from the 70s on, there are attempts on this man's life. As I said, now to date, 25. They can't kill him. Something happens each time. And it's not just the ETs. They protected him in the beginning, but he has to learn to be very, very sensitive to danger. And he is, and he was, and okay. So you have people in intelligence agencies with snipers and all this stuff who can't get this guy. So they come to a conclusion fairly early on. If we can't assassinate him so far, and I hope never, let's assassinate his character. Let's make him out to be a fraudster. These people have massive resources, and Billy doesn't. So what they did is, here's the genesis of how it works with his photography. From the 70s on, Billy would go to a camera store. I think it's called Baer, B-A-E-R, and he buys his camera. He buys film there. He never buys an enlarger, development equipment, anything technological. He has a tripod, gets a movie camera. He's got an Olympus 35 millimeter camera. This is important if people want to know why it's easy to start with the Meier case, which is the place you're going to end up anyhow. Here's why. And so I'm going to lay this out and then interrupt me and if I'm not clear or if there's a question. When Meier takes his photographs, he brings the film, and sometimes these films are on cassette, they're sealed already in some of these cameras. He brings it to the camera store. They send it out for processing at a Kodak facility. The intelligence people, CIA and maybe others, intercept and obtain some of these films. Some are stolen. He had many more films than have survived. Some with the photos and all, they get people to manipulate these photos, to create strings and things where there aren't. As a matter of fact, and I'll come back to that in a second because I know somebody who did it, was hired to do it. So he would send these things out. They come back. Billy looks through things quickly. He throws them in shoe boxes and he sticks them in drawers because Billy's been involved since the age of 5. Billy's going on these craft all over the place. Flying saucers, UFOs, UAP. It's not a big deal to him. Okay, but people will need the evidence. I take the photos, I take the films, stick them in a box. People steal them too. Lots of them were stolen. So what happens is one of the things that was very interesting, and this is where some of this whole thing with the dinosaurs and the women come in. In 1975, he goes on what's called the Great Journey. And all of this was even in the original contact reports that I got. These, mimeographed, primitive published runoff copies. And he is shown all over the universe and all this stuff. And in one particular contact conversation he's having, he is told there are two women in America that are doubles. They are doppelgangers for Asket and Nira. And Billy says, oh, great, let's go look in on all. And Ptah, the alleged leader of the Playaran race, says, no, for certain reasons, we're not going to do that. And he says, a lot of your photographs from the Great Journey with the dinosaurs, different things, they have been falsified. You can't. They're telling him this in the 70s. You see, the skeptics think they just found this out. Billy Meier's hoaxing photos in 1990 to 93 or whatever they come forward. And he says, they say to him, you really shouldn't promote those as authentic anymore. And so then Asket and Nira photos, along with dinosaur photos and the pterodactyl, and these are part of that. Now, we put up on my blog, and there's even more information in some other places I've got to gather together, those photos of the two women, Asket and Nira, and showing how they were manipulated with an overlay where they overlaid faces from these entertainers on a show that was called the Dean Martin Show in America. And most people never noticed that you can actually see things when you look at the photos more clearly. He just said, oh, those are hoaxed photos. Yeah, those were manipulated, but not by Billy Meier. And we knew even more because people said, well, look, if Billy had set up a camera, if he knew when and where Asket, these two women who look just like Asket and Nira were going to be on this show, he's got to set up his video camera or his whatever, even a 35 millimeter, and be able to click those photos. But where are the cathode ray tube lines that would be appearing in the photographs? They're not there. So whoever took these images, they got them from the actual video recording made of the Dean Martin show, not from a TV. This goes on and on, Daniel. This is why I'm saying people, yeah, if you are going to try to enter into the Billy Meier case, a lot of us, a lot of people, and a lot of other people, we've taken the time to go through this and say, yes, the skeptics are going to attack this, and they're going to attack that, and all, and here's the truth, and you can find out for yourself. So people will have to do something that nobody running around in the world in ufology ever bothers to talk about, and that's learn to think. And these younger people who are, oh my gosh, UAPs and UFOs, and calm down, folks. You've got to start getting this stuff working because you are being fed so much disinformation. Well, what if this is disinformation? That's the point. How do you find out? So let's go to your points here. The dinosaur photos, the two women, all of that was discussed decades before there was an issue about it. We have it online. It's in books where they're telling him about it. But you won't hear this from the skeptics, and you won't hear this from people in ufology because they don't know what they're talking about, and they've never done the research. So what happens now? Where are we at with this introduction to the Meier material? The wedding cake ship. Oh, that's got to be a hoax. Even the original investigator, Lee Elder, said, that can't be real. It turns out that it's more than real. Well, how can we know it's more than real? Well, there are 63 photos and one video. In that video, which we have, it's stuck it up, and now it's again on YouTube and stuff. Billy Meier, you see, it opens with a frame of a tree in the distance with an object in front of the tree. Billy Meier walks into frame. He's now videotaping himself. He has his 35 millimeter camera in his one hand, and he's taking pictures. We have those photos of the wedding cake UFO hovering in front of the tree. Then he goes out of frame and zooms in 200 meters, whatever the heck it is, zooms in on it, and you see it. Now, there have been people, there's a 74-page analysis done of the wedding cake UFO. There is a book out by the same people, Francis Villate and Chris Locke, and they show you using not just so-called regular photo analytical tools, but they use Google Earth. They do triangulations. They zoom in on the globes on the WC UFO. I'd like to even show. There's a detail. I have it on my blog. Maybe I'll be able to bring it up and show it to you. There's a detail of the WC UFO, and this is important because we are being trolled all the time by skeptics. Especially one guy who actually spends a lot of time in Germany, and he's a guy who's a very vicious person. He's threatened Billy's life, he's threatened my life, and he tries to tell people that the WC UFO has been, that's already been, duplicated by a skeptic in England. And the fact is, the guy didn't duplicate it at all. And I'm going to get to a detailed photo of it, and I'll try to do a screen share here as soon as I can get it. And you will see detail that has absolutely been irreproducible. It ends the whole discussion about the wedding cake UFO is effectively, in my opinion, ended with this detail. And, let's see. Yes, here we go. I'm going to bring that up, and then I'll try and share screen. Oops, sorry. I'll get this in a second, guys. So, but let's talk about, here we go. So, but let's talk about this whole thing, because if people realize that there's nothing that Meier has ever hoaxed, nothing ever, then they're going to go, well, wait a minute, let's look more closely. And they spend all the time they want with the UFO evidence, and that's fine, and that's fair enough. And then they can move on to the important stuff. I dare say the important stuff. Well, good night. What could be more important than UFOs? And as I said, what's more important than UFOs is a higher standard of proof. And that means, let's see if we can get this to come up. I don't see it yet. I don't know. My screen sharing is paused. Is there a way?
We can see your screen, but we can't see.
Hold on, maybe I can resume share. I'm clicking on resume share like crazy. And for whatever reason, I wonder why this won't resume share.
The men in black.
Oh, somebody or something. But anyway, I mean, you're probably not getting anything significant here on this share. I'm going to try it again. Let me see if I can. So let's see what we get here. Well, for whatever reason, the technology doesn't appear to want to work here today. Oh, well. So I'll do a stop share and see if we get back. Okay, we got back to me. Now try one more time.
Sure.
And if it works, fine. If not, no, it doesn't. It's not going to allow it. Maybe you guys will add it in or something to the video. But the point is the details on this thing, and it's so beautiful, and it's unknown what there's crystals around this thing, and inside, and lenses, and machining. You get into this and you go, well, who else has any evidence? Let alone Billy was within 15 feet of this craft. So I understand, Daniel and Dustin, why it can seem, it's so hard to get into them. It's only hard because it's real, because it's substantial. There's still, most of Meier's 1,200 photos were stolen. We still have over 600 of them. And we put up on the blog, in the Beam Ship Gallery, we put up a lot of them. We show them. There's 8 films still, and that video. And there's a video from 1970s where Billy Meier, you see a hillside and you see an object hovering in the sky. It looks like a small round object. Billy walks up the hillside and sits there, and it's hovering above his head. I mean, there's another video, another film, pardon me. These two aren't videos, they're films. The craft goes in the distance, goes behind a hill. And this behind the hill comes up and comes into the foreground. You cannot do that with models. You can't take a model and your hillside is 100 meters away, let's just say, or it was probably more, and you can dip your model behind the hillside and then bring it up. Doesn't work. So honestly, the biggest obstacle right now is the inexperience of the people who are most fascinated by this stuff, who think they've just discovered, knockwurst or something. It's just like, folks, this has been going on. Meier's contacts have been going on since 1942. He's been putting out information. Was taken in time travel since 1947. And all of this, we try to give it to the world for free. And the greedy, power-hungry warmongers don't want you to know, and they want you to chase lights in the sky. Oh, look at this, and look at that. Lou Elizondo, Stephen Greer, and this one and that. What do you come away with? Nothing. No evidence that you can really dig into. And Billy explained the Tic Tac video thing, actually, about 7 years ago. He explained about the races that are underground, whose craft are sometimes seen, who are the descendants of ancient extraterrestrials who were living on Earth, even ruling over people thousands of years ago. Meier's published probably about 50,000 pages of information. You have access to it in German. We have to wait for English translations. And we have charted, at this point, over 250 specific, error-free examples of prophetically accurate scientific, geopolitical, environmental. Meier's the first person to warn about unnatural man-made climate change, global warming, damage to the ozone, etc., and his medical and economic information, the coming global financial crash. In 2005, I think it was, I was in Switzerland, and I asked Billy one day, Billy, what's the reason for the Iraq war? Fundamentally, what was the reason? Was it the oil? Which I thought it was. And Billy says, no. Fundamentally, it's your dollar. If things go a certain way, this is 2005, 2006. If things go a certain way, you may as well roll cigarettes with your paper money. 2017, 5 years ago, Billy says, the coming global financial crash, the coming cashless societies, all of this designed to control people. Now, remember, in 1958, or you may not remember because you might not have known, Billy foretells the EU will try to biochip every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth. Oh, now we're coming to a cashless society, Meier foretells it 5 years ago, and talks about the dispossession of peoples here in America and other countries through the global financial crash and all these powerful people that are going to try to control everybody. What is the Meier case about? Well, we can find out what the Meier case is about, or we can run around and chase nonsense that we can do nothing with. I don't care if you get the best photos now. They're still not as good as Meier's in terms of the crowd. Some might be, but now you've got CG and all this, and so you can't know. Videos, okay, things are flying around. Within 15 feet? No, nobody's taking those photos. Are you getting close-ups of the machining of these craft of dissimilar? No. But more importantly, are the people who are connected to these craft, who are very far in advance of us, who are giving Meier the most important information from the past, the future, the science. Are we going to pay attention, or are we going to run around to stupid UFO events where people who know nothing and are going to sell you stupid books that they don't know anything about the facts, just to create another entertainment industry? It's well underway. This is $1 billion industry already. And Billy Meier, he doesn't make presentations. He's not running around giving lectures and claiming to be something, but he's special. Publishes his information. He has the meetings. He dodges bullets. He gives it out to the world for free. And most people in the world, unfortunately, are, and I'll define it in a minute so no one's offended too much, are too stupid to get it. And as Meier accurately defines stupidity, is the inability to think, to think. Instead, UAP phenomena, lights in the sky. Ooh, I saw this thing. Did the sun disappear? What's that other thing in the sky? What do you care? What are you going to do with it, folks? Nothing. What are you doing about your rights being ripped away from you day in and day out? Crazy people that let your countries, our countries, be flooded by people, many of whom, or let's say this, a good number of whom are genuine, seeking asylum from terrorist countries and dictatorships and wars, but large numbers. Large numbers are criminals, are terrorists, are just people who want to take advantage of the freebies that they can get in other societies. They cross into countries in Europe, they cross rushing over the borders here because our government is made up of people that want to intentionally destroy the greater class of people in America. They want to control and rob everybody. And Meier predicted this. He's spelled it out, the dispossession of the American people. The government will turn the military and the police against a partly heavily armed population. This is a worldwide thing. It isn't just one group. There's a number of groups, and we're not conspiracy theories. It's fact. It's real. There are always, and there always will be until a certain point in time, those people who obtain power are very powerful, and they want more, and they're going to control or destroy everybody. So, lights in the sky. You can do nothing with it. And if you return to it, if you just keep going, well, the Meier, that's too complicated. Really? You're interested in UFOs? There's no other evidence that's comparable. You never will see it. Metal samples that have been tested, sound recordings that are irreproducible or recorded 45 years ago. What else do you want? 120 eyewitnesses. I'm an eyewitness to the craft myself. Just so what? So what? Yeah. There's a reason. So before I just repeat myself silly on it, that's where this is. And it's not, the work has been done, frankly, it's been done for everybody. The people that preceded me, Wendell Stevens, this wonderful man, I knew him over a 20-year period. I didn't see him a lot. I knew him. And he talked a lot. He shared information with me as he would with anybody. Lee and Britt Elders, who worked with him, but Wendell had to keep certain things even from them. His whole thing with Asket, And then you have people that have come since then that are looking in. James Deardorff, who got involved with the wonderful book, The Talmud Emmanuel, is fantastic. The true teaching of the man falsely known as Jesus Christ, who's really was called Emmanuel, even Isaiah 7:14, Old Testament, Matthew 1:23, and other people. And then the people contemporarily with me who've been doing all this independent research and stuff, and we put stuff on the blogs and people, it's not that difficult, but you still would have to think it through for yourself so that you would know, not believe. There's nothing to believe in the Meier case. It's either true or it isn't. With everything else, you go, well, what is it? Okay, I'm sorry. Daniel, Dustin.
No, that's all right. No, I agree with you. Like, I hate that ufology sidelines the Billy Meier case, and the fact that he has over 1,000 photographs and 100 films. A lot of it did get stolen, and I'm more intrigued about the other people who have been really close to Meier to actually witness with their own eyes and actually take their own photographs. I like how Mr. Musenberger took a series of photographs that are amazing of the light ships. I actually have one of Mr. Musenberger's photo right here with Wendell Stevens' handwriting on the back. But yeah, he took this, I think, half a mile away from Meier's house.
Now, but let's be honest about this. The problem with some of the other photos, there are at least 5 or 6 other photographers, and Guido was one of them. Some people took better photos than the light thing, because lights in the sky photos, unless you are really able to do photographic analysis and rule out certain things, they fall into the category for skeptics of lights in the sky. Guido was an amazing man, a brilliant man, and he wrote that book, and Yet They Fly, and Still They Fly, the subsequent version of it. He spent over 30 years, with Billy, and he was probably one of the closest people to him, because he was a school teacher and principal, a mathematician. He wrote a book, I think still in German, on time travel. Brilliant man. And I got to meet him only a few times. I met him in America, I met him in Switzerland, and my German is not good enough. That's nicht gut genug, So I don't try to talk to people. Sometimes when I'm in Switzerland and I'm there for a little while, I start being able to babble a little bit, and I can understand more than I can, speak. But we could exchange a few words. We filmed him in our film, The Silent Revolution of Truth, where he told a story about the apple from the spaceship that was given to him. And he had it in the big jar, and it had never decomposed. And it's very interesting. But Guido was a very well-respected man, because, he highly educated, and he was curious, I think a little skeptical when he first heard about the case. And he went from Austria to meet with Billy, and he became, a core group member. And Pobol Chang, Dustin, you mentioned her. I've never met Pobol. She was a child at the ashram in Murali, at the Ashoka ashram in Murali, India, in the 1960s, when Billy was there. And she was an eyewitness to the craft. We have 12 photos that survived from that time, where you can see the craft, you can see some lights in the sky. There's another amazing photo there. And she, Asket, oops, what's that? There we go. Asket used to go into her room at night, occasionally sit there and hum or sing to her while she was a little 12-year-old girl falling asleep. And Asket would, stroke her hair or whatever. And Asket said every time she'd wake up in the morning, she always felt like she knew far more than when she went to bed at night. Now, amazing. She and there were 100 eyewitnesses at this ashram who saw Billy with Asket. This is the lights in the sky photo, as you see in the lower right-hand corner. That was Asket's nanny, who was standing there when the ships appeared in the sky, 1964. There they are. And so you've got, this goes back, folks, years and decades. And Billy was interviewed by a prominent reporter for the Delhi Statesman newspaper, in which, some of these photos also appeared. This all checks out. This isn't somebody running around, I just saw a UFO. Who cares? So the people that were involved in these earlier days, like Pobol, like Guido, like other core group members, like Billy's sons, the whole drama with his ex-wife, who comes forward and says, "Oh, it's a hoax." She's on video in German talking about how real it is, and Atlantis is sitting there with a painting he did of one of the UFOs. I mean, 17 of these people pass lie detector tests. It's all real. And so, of course, human beings being what they are, after a divorce and all, suddenly her bank account goes up, and now she's claiming that, oh, Billy never, no, it's all a hoax. No, she's already on record. That's real. Billy's the real deal. But human life, this is where this nonsense about, perfect beings, space beings, extraterrestrials. No, people throughout the universe, there are many life forms. There are billions of human civilizations, according to the information. And human beings go through messy things. It's called life. And human relationships are difficult. And all of this is part of evolution. And Billy, he knows what he's in for. He's known since childhood. This is going to be a really rough ride, kid. And Billy said, okay, I'll do it, because this is something that his essence, his creation spirit, creation energy, spiritual form, whatever you want to call it, has embodied prophet contactees many times in the past on our world, let alone other things. And they've always been treated brutally and either crucified or, run out of town or stoned to death or whatever, because they bring truth to human beings who are very slow learners. And as I understand what I've read in this case recently, the Plejaran extraterrestrials basically, along with Meier, said, well, this particular mission, which goes back 13,500 years on Earth, they are giving it up. They don't consider it a success. It will bear fruit in the future, but the intention to help have people liberate themselves at this point in history, it did not succeed. And we'd have to understand, by becoming more familiar with the material and the information, just what this means. This is a pretty heavy thing, because the information they've given us on everything you can imagine, with the intention that human beings, intelligent people, scientists have been the worst. We have such a breed of low-life scientists who only want fame and fortune. We have in America a guy, and I'll come back to criticizing the rest of them, but there's a guy named Avi Loeb at Harvard. Oumuamua, or whatever the thing was, a spaceship came through. No, it was Meier described it in a sentence, dismissed it. Part asteroid, part comet came through the universe. Well, it came through this part of the universe. But all these, they're going to write books, and they're talking about extraterrestrials, and you send them the real thing. I did conversation online with a guy named Professor Robin Hansen, who's got all these theories about extraterrestrial life and blah, 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 and why civilizations come and go. And I listened to him, I asked him questions, and he's blabbing away. And as soon as I put up those Meier photos on screen, this guy, he's twitching, he's jumping around far more than I am today. I'm excited about this. This guy doesn't know what to do with himself. He's seeing stuff he can't relate to, and he starts double talking and criticizing. Later on, he would criticize evidence he never looked at. That's the cut of the scientists in our world who help to bring the destruction upon our world by their arrogance and their profit-oriented, egomaniacal behavior. So when you go back to all of this stuff and you look at what the Plejaran brought into this world and what Meier brought and published of theirs and of his own efforts, it failed for now. It failed to help us help ourselves to prevent now the coming massive war with weapons, that some of which we don't even know about, that have been developed over the past years, that are going to be used against who? The populations of the world. That's the way war works. All the civilians suffer more than any armies do. Yeah, armies go in, they have losses, and they sign up to be soldiers, but the civilians haven't signed up to have nuclear weapons vaporizing them, as America did to people during the Second World War, for no good reason, simply to test the weaponry. That's the kind of psychopathy that infects human beings in this world. The rulers and so-called leaders, known and unknown, in the world of various countries, affiliated oftentimes with no particular country, just world control-oriented people. So what's perfect distraction? UFOs, UAP. Oh yeah, lights in the sky. Folks, crack open the free information on my blog, my website, other people that publish Meier material. Go for it. Start to critically think your way through it, and don't waste your time. Once you realize these are authentic, here's the proof, here's the evidence, I get it. Now what's the reason? Your survival is the reason all of this was done. Your survival. Don't squander that. Don't waste it.
Good way to word it.
By the way, I talked to Professor Avi Loeb from the Harvard University. I had him for an interview. It was pretty interesting. We were talking about, I think you meant Oumuamua.
Yeah, that's right.
Interstellar object that crossed our universe. It was pretty interesting, yeah. But
ask him about the Billy Meier case the next time you get a chance. I had a very fleeting phone conversation with him once when he was going in between things at Harvard. And then I sent him information. He never responded, of course. They don't want to know this. I want to sell my books. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
They don't want to know about stuff like that. I've talked to him about different things, but there's certain stuff that he's just not into.
He can't make a buck off it. This is with all of it. This is the reason that people in ufology won't talk about Meier too. They can't make any money off of it. They can't become famous for it, for whatever that's worth. So instead, they're going to talk about, oh, the pyramids in Atlantis. Great, fascinating. Most of them don't have the right, complete, full information on anything that they talk about. They have parts and pieces. Some's right, much of it's wrong. So why bother? Except, well, I can sell a book and I can lecture. Graham Hancock, I corresponded with him. He won't talk about the Meier case. He's a drug user. He's got a nice thing going here with his, whatever he presents, but he doesn't want to talk about the Meier material. Even though Meier's information is more accurate than his and he could learn from it, he can't make a buck off it. And I will say this to any of their faces, and I will also say one other thing. By your having me on to express my opinion, I do not, and your audience does not assume that you have to agree or that you do agree with any or anything I'm saying. It's simply, I'm your guest today, and I've been banging around for 43 years doing research, and these are my opinions.
Yeah. I was about to say, with all due respect, I'm not convinced quite yet. But that's not your fault or not Billy Meier's fault. I find the story around Billy Meier very interesting, as I already said. But I am very skeptical. That's just what I am.
It's good. It's good.
I'm a little less skeptical.
It's like, here's the thing. If you're skeptical, look, I'm skeptical about things too. The people I don't trust are people that define themselves as skeptics, because it means, and I'm not saying that's not you. You're saying, look, I'm skeptical about things. You're skeptical. When people, and I've taken these people on and kicked their butts, when people tell me that they're skeptics, it means they already come to the table thinking they know what's real, what isn't, and what can be true. So for you, Daniel, or Dustin, anybody, I say, okay, you're skeptical. Good. Start with something. What are you skeptical of? And then what do you need to know, not believe, what do you need to know in order to resolve your skepticism one way or the other? So I ask you that right now.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Again,
what are you skeptical of, let's say, the most in the Meier case?
The most skeptical is the most skeptical I am is the least important to you. It's those pictures and those videos. I mean, there are many photos that are great, to be honest, that are great. And I don't know if they're real, but who knows if any photo is real that we see, not only Billy Meier's. But yeah, I would say those stories about, man, I think at one point he said, and I'm, to my defense, I'm not deep into all that stuff. Dustin is way more deep into it than I am. I heard that once on a time travel, he met Jesus, and Jesus told him that Billy Meier is on a higher spiritual level than Jesus himself. And yeah, if somebody like me hears stuff like that, I go, okay, this guy's nuts.
Right. Understood. I understand. So let me back up first thing, and then I'm going to come to that. You talked about the photos. I told you I was interrogated by this man. Now, first thing to know is that the photos were originally analyzed starting in 1978. They used computer analysis. They used everything available, and it's all published for free. So you won't find that when skeptics say they duplicate Billy Meier's photos, I say, okay, have your photos tested, same standards from 3 years ago. No, because the photo analysis done then showed that these were large objects. They were a distance from the camera. They had their own energy field. And there's even one on the WCUFO. I have this on my website. There's a nighttime shot, black with a gold UFO. Everybody says, oh, that's just a model in front of a black curtain. Take that photo, as people have done. You drop it in Photoshop and you play with the contrast and the brightness. Now you see it's a large object. There's a grassy hillside. It's a nighttime photo. There's a gravel road. There's a meter marking post on the road. And there's an energy field glowing around the craft. How could you or I take a photo, an object against a black background, adjust it in Photoshop, and find out it's real? It's a real big craft. So if one wants to find out about that whole thing, but I told you I was interrogated by this guy. He lays out in a free article, and I hope Dustin will help you, and I will send all this stuff. Anybody that sees this, that wants to know, oh, send me that article, send me a link, or how do I find? He gave, first of all, he took on two skeptics after he told me who he was about 5 months after, 8 months actually after we started talking in August of 2017. He says, okay, I'll tell you who I am. Open your email. I see all these citations from the government. This guy's the top investigator. This is government, Air Force, Department of Defense. They're all talking about it. He says, okay, I was top investigator there. He says, now I'll tell you about your Billy Meier case. He says, I went back, I investigated, starting with the India photos and Pobal Cheng. I checked her out. She was a diplomat at the UN for 12 years with Cambodia. She was at the Ashoka Ashram. She came forward along with another woman she knew. They gave a presentation on video. There was nothing in it for them to expose themselves publicly. They were telling the truth. And then I investigated the newspaper, he says to me, in which the reporter interviewed Billy Meier when he's 27 years old, and the photos that he's looking at. And you still have a dozen of those photos. And then I went through the methodology that anybody can do: means, motive, and opportunity. And he says, so what I've done, he said, I took on a couple skeptics. These people, I cannot talk to any more of them because they don't understand research. And he says, I've written an article. I'm sending it to you. You post it on your website. Anybody who can think A, B, C, D will be able to go through and understand how and why Billy Meier's photos, his films, and his contacts are 100% authentic. And I will take on, if necessary, any more skeptics, but I don't want to deal with them. They're too stupid. Okay. So now we have, and it's all documented. These people aren't, UFO people. These people, a guy like that, or the US astronaut, these are people trained. These are really high level people who had no axe to grind, except he was a skeptic. And he came at me like a skeptic, which was great. So it's not about, I'm going to sell you to believe it. You can read how you can work your way through that. Now let's go to the Emmanuel thing. So, because there never was a man named Jesus Christ. Now, when I tell that to people who come at me, like the religious people, I say, look, do one thing. Give me one or two biographies written around that time, a couple thousand years ago, of anybody called Jesus Christ in the Middle East. They don't exist. Now, you can get biographies of famous people going back even hundreds of years BC. You got Julius Caesar and this one and that one, and people who were writing about these people while they were alive. The most famous man in all of human history, and nobody ever wrote a biography. Why? It's because there was nobody by that name. Well, does that mean everything? No, there was a man. Now, and I'm getting to this whole thing with Billy visiting with him and all that, which of course is pretty far out, no matter how you look at it. So you find out that in the Old Testament, where there's no Jesus being mentioned, this is the Hebrew book, in Isaiah 7:14 you get, and his name shall be called Emmanuel. Whoa, who's that? No more mention until you get to the New Testament. And in Matthew 1:23, identical. And his name shall be called Emmanuel. Well, that was expunged by the church in the formation of the religion and all that. There's no Emmanuel, just like the 17 female disciples were expunged and everything else. Now, here you got a UFO guy saying he's gone back. Billy never said he met Jesus. He said he met Emmanuel. Now, look, I always say, according to the information of the case, when there are things that I can neither prove nor disprove. I can't prove that Billy didn't go back in time for that. And I can't prove, that he did. So what do we do with that? We read it if we want to and study what the teaching was. Now, why would that be important? Because in around 1990 or so, when the first English translation of that document, which Billy co-discovered in Jerusalem, this Talmud Emmanuel, this teaching of Emmanuel, when he discovered that, it attracted the attention of an American who was a specialist in comparative religions. He was a professor. He was also a professor of meteorology named James Deardorff. And he said, oh, another Bible hoax, let me at it. So Deardorff takes the Talmud and he starts going through it. And a year and a half, whatever later, he comes out with his own book. It's called Celestial Teachings. And that book, in that book, he says, the Talmud Emmanuel resolves over 350 inconsistencies in the book of Matthew, at least 150 of which weren't even discussed or known about at the time that book was published, this Talmud. And here's the funny thing. When you compare the Talmud Emmanuel to the book of Matthew, where all of these things are inconsistencies and don't make sense, the version in the Talmud Emmanuel makes sense. It just resolves it all. And so Deardorff, the skeptic who puts out his own findings, says he's going to debunk this book, he says, well, in all honesty, the Talmud Emmanuel is the source material for the book of Matthew, not the other way around. Well, that, of course, is not music to the ears of people who are very religious. Now, does that mean that Billy Meier went back in time to meet with whoever that guy was? No, it doesn't. You can't prove it by that. So how could you possibly prove time travel and Billy Meier going anywhere? Well, strangely enough, and I won't go in detail about it, in 1947 and 49, 10 and 12-year-old Edward Albert Meier writes information about a coming epidemic in the 20th, later on, 20th, 21st century now, and treatment for it and problems that would arise about it, and a good deal of detailed information. He writes this in 1947 and 49, along with other things about what was coming in the world. So what we have to understand is this: when we talk about unnatural man-made climate change, global warming, and damage to the ozone, Edward Albert Meier, Billy Meier, is the first human being I could find to specifically write about all of that, specifically, over decades of time, starting in 1947, 49. So we don't have to believe anything. We certainly don't have to believe that Billy Meier went back to Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Well, it doesn't help us to believe it or to not believe it. It's like, okay, well, the guy says that. Let me read the book and see what I can get out of that book. Or not. Maybe I don't care to. But what do we do when we start correlating and corroborating prophetic information, some of which is just expressed conversationally, and we find that months, years, and decades later, that's when it gets discovered? Now, you talk about somebody like Avi Loeb. He should have been interested to know that Billy Meier has published specific discoveries, if you will, about every planet in the solar system, black holes, et cetera, up to 30 and more years before NASA did. I've personally gone and met with a NASA JPL scientist to show him that this guy is working on the imaging for the Mars rover. He's involved with the whole Mars thing. He couldn't understand. How could this guy do this? Does he make lucky guesses? I said, no, Ken, I don't think 10, 12, 15 specific things about the canals and where the water is and the discovery of water and this and that. Lightning on Mars. This guy who works on stuff with Mars, he didn't know that there was lightning on Mars. Billy Meier published it 28 or 30 years before NASA discovers it in 2009. So this is where, now, so I'm shotgunning a lot of stuff at you, Daniel. Now, what's the reason? Did I study physics and science in high school? No, I majored in painting and playing my guitar in the cafeteria and trying to find new girlfriends. And then I get out of that and I have no useful skills and I have to create careers for myself, water purification and different things. I'm one of the first people, 1995, I wake up with the idea for digital book publishing. I find a guy, we start a company called eBooks, 1995, 96. He loses control of the name, but it's still NetBooks. We're doing this. He's a Greek guy, Greek-American guy. He's got a friend he's on the phone with all the time. And I said to him one day, I said to this guy, Alex, we've got it all over your friend, that guy, Jeff, because we're able to download books from the internet. We were doing it. And poor Jeff, he's got to ship them out of his Amazon warehouse. This guy I'm working with goes and dumps the stock on his company. He was ready to do downloadable movies. So here we were doing ebooks before Jeff Bezos or anybody. And he was about to do, but he decided he'd pump and dump the stock on his company. So I was out of another job. At the same time, I already had been studying the Meier material for 15 years or whatever it was. And, I just keep on reinventing myself, but I fall into having to do all this research into this scientific corroboration, the proof that this is real. And then I make friends with other people who are scientists or who are in aerospace and NASA aerospace engineers and all this stuff. There's an attorney who sends me I don't even know the guy, says, well, I went over your scientific research in the Meier case, and that's courtroom quality stuff. Yeah, you know how to think. I go, oh, well, okay, good. Anybody can do it if I can do it. So if I've done this and other people who are far more skilled and studied can do it and contribute to it, it's there for people who have more or less background than I started with to go through it. Because if people are going to spend their time chasing UFOs and lights in the sky and thinking it's a fascinating field, what's your criteria? I have to say it to anybody. If you don't know what's real and you don't know how to figure out what's real, you're just entertaining yourself. You're just entertaining and distracting. This is not an attack, folks. I was entertained when I started off as a kid listening to radio shows in the 40s and 50s and TV shows in the 50s and 60s about rockets and outer space. There's a big difference between being entertained and finding out what's real and true. That's everybody's burden. We're just trying to make it as accessible as possible. Yeah. Billy Meier has given all this to the world.
Yeah. And it's free.
So, yeah, most of, sure, if you want to buy books or some films or something, it's great. But there's thousands of pages that you can learn more in an hour sitting down than you can in a university class, because they just don't hold anything back. Yeah. They tell you what you want to know here. So part of what happens here, Daniel, you have the right approach. You're going, well, I don't think this can't be true. This is not. But you're asking, you admit, I'm skeptical about it. Good. So if you're skeptical, if we're skeptical, what do we need? We need evidence, but we need something else. We need a methodology, a standard by which evidence can be vetted, analyzed, authenticated, or debunked. Simple. See, if I tell you that this is a UFO and it hovers in my room here, how do you prove? Maybe it is. What's your evidence for it apart from the thing? Okay, so we're in a different realm here with this, and it's it's there. So it's a hard choice, because the other thing that happens to a lot of people these days, and I'm just be honest about it, because this field is so glittery now, and celebrities are all involved in UAP and all this stuff, everybody wants to know as much as they can. They think they want, but they don't. They want more. I want more.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? I want
It's
more
endless.
stuff.
It's endless.
Yeah. And that's how we're appealed to by people who know how the human mind works, people who are skilled in presenting through media, through entertainment, through the internet, distraction and disinformation. So you got a hard one on your hands. But if you go, okay, I'm going to take that plunge because I do want to know, then you're on your way to something that will probably greatly change your life. It changed my life and many people's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does change your life. And skepticism can be a very useful tool, because then you take an item by item thing. I'm skeptical of these photos. Okay, were any of those analyzed? Oh yeah, here's the analysis. That wedding cake UFO, I've got a free 74-page analysis on my blog. And then you can, if you want, you go farther, you get the book on it. And you can, for free, you take the photo off the website and you throw it in Photoshop and play with your adjustments. How you look at the detail of that craft. So then you're faced with something else. You're going, well, how do they do that? Good. The truth is a friend to any genuine skeptic, meaning someone who approaches saying, I'm not so sure. Good. Here you go. This is how you know. So when the investigator supervisor guy said to me, look, means, motive, and opportunity. That'll take you right through the process. We use it all the time, whether it's police work. This was a guy that, dealt with politicians and presidents and military and spies and all. They figure things out. Things have to make sense, not just claims. So that is, you have an opportunity, and by you, I also mean any and everybody watching our interaction, our conversation. It's free.
Yes.
It's free.
Yes.
You don't have to buy anything. If you want to learn more, you go past all the free stuff or along with the free stuff. Then you start learning what it's really about and how it works on your thinking and on your life and on your happiness and on your freedom.
Yeah. So Michael Horn, I've seen you play music and you play guitar and you write your own songs. I actually listened to a few of them. They're really good. I like it. How long have you been doing that for?
62 years or so. I started writing back, I think it was, it was about 17 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So coincidentally, I'm just finishing up. I'm going to put out a downloadable book of over 100 of my lyrics. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of people because the lyrics cover an awful lot of things. Some of them are humorous. Some of them are, very serious. Some of them deal with things pertaining to UFOs, to health, to comedy, to relationships, certainly a lot of that, to families, to children, to the universe, a very wide variety of songs that I started writing, long before I found the Meier material. And I haven't written as many songs in the past, let's say 10 years or so, because I've been ever more occupied with this. And I think I'll be getting back to some more songwriting as well. Songs I've written, social commentary songs. I was writing those kinds of songs years ago. Environmental songs. My first environmental song I wrote in 1970. And it goes like, we are man and woman seeking for the way to get along with all the trees and seas and animals before our light is gone. We'll stay here for our lifetime. We'll go the way we came. And the only thing we leave this earth is our body and our name. And now there's mountains of aluminum where forests used to stand and acres of newspapers suffocate our land. Stay here for our lifetime. go the way we came, and the only thing we leave this earth is our body and our name. I am one with Brother River, Mother Earth, and Sister Air. Spirit, can you hear it? My voice is everywhere. So, Father, guide your little ones with strong but tender hands, that they may see the morning sun rise on the newborn land. They'll stay here for the lifetime, and they'll go the way they came. The only thing they'll leave this earth is their body and their name. And I am one with Brother River, Mother Earth, and Sister Air. I am Spirit. Can you hear it? My voice is everywhere. That was like 1970, before the environmental movement had gotten going. And a few years before that, I'd written with a couple friends an environmental animated show about air pollution that we couldn't get produced because nobody cared about air pollution. So yeah, I've been writing.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's I think I finally have to get this lyric book out, because it's just burning away, and I want to get that out into the world. So we're on the last couple of days of just finalizing things, and then my graphics person will put it together as a downloadable book and put it up on the website in the shop for people. And I think they'll be surprised at the topics and how things get covered. There's detective stories in it, and I mean, the song that we wrote for the film, The Silent Revolution of Truth, that was the film we put out in 2008, and it's called The Silent Revolution of Truth. And the song was inspired by what a young Pleiadian, an extraterrestrial girl, said on her world. They had a contest, and they said, we're going to ask our citizens to try to express in one phrase what Billy Meier's work on Earth is. And the person who wins, who has the most precise and succinct phrase, we will bring them to meet Billy on a contact. So this young girl, I think she was 10 or 12 at the time, Clydina Icarina, she comes up with this phrase, the silent or the still revolution of truth. The stille Revolution der Wahrheit, or something like this, the silent revolution of truth. So when we heard that, we built a song around it. A friend of mine who's a guitarist and everything, and people of the world, our inner voice says time is running out, and so our choices. We can change the course of history with our thoughts. We can see that no more wars ever fought, peace is sought. And when it's taught to all the people of the world, like you and me, because nothing speaks louder than the silent revolution of truth. The cry begins from deep within to turn the power loose. When heart and mind with truth align, we'll see the living proof of the silent revolution of truth. People of the world, our inner wisdom, it goes on and on, But anyway, I like writing songs. And so basically, for the most part, I put that on the back burner because this would become for me literally full-time, voluntarily, but full-time. I'm on it at least 6 days a week. I love doing whatever I can for this. So I didn't do as much in terms of singing, performing, writing songs, and I had done a lot of it. And I thought, that's fine, because this is the most important thing in the world, in the universe. And my other stuff is just very important to me, and some people like it. So eventually, someday I'll put out a book. So that day has come. And then I might finish my autobiography that I started some time ago about from my childhood to finding the Meier material and what's happened since then. But first things first. So the lyric book comes out hopefully in a week or so.
Mm-hmm. Sounds interesting.
Sounds
interesting. Dustin, do you have any more questions? If not, I have one last question.
I'm going to save my questions for next time because I want this guy back on with us.
Yeah, of course. Definitely. So my last question for the day would be, what was the last book you read, not Billy Meier related?
Not Billy Meier related. I'll tell you a book that I picked up. I haven't finished yet. Honest to gosh. Spy Secrets That Can Save Your Life, it's called.
I know that one.
You know that book?
Yeah, I heard of it.
Because I like things that pertain to being resourceful, survival, and all. Now, a lot of the survival stuff and these kinds of books, some of them are very, very hardcore. Some things are not realistic, even though they've come from expert people. People who are not expert like them, who pick them up, can maybe get a little lost about some things that you can't do or rely on unless you got a lot of training. But I like that kind of stuff. All my life, I've loved martial arts. I was particularly enamored when I had the opportunity to be training up until a couple of years ago. I like what's called Sistema. It's a Russian martial art. I know there are teachers of it in Germany and all over the world now. I was the first person to bring the Russian trainer who lives in Canada. I brought him to the US in 2000 because I saw this stuff. I said, oh, this is the best stuff I've ever seen. I got to bring this guy. I got to do something. And I'm not I don't promote things like that, but I found a way to bring the guy to America. And it's just one of the things I loved ever since I was, a kid. And the Russians are very brilliant with health related things. And strangely enough, their particular training embodies certain principles, such as non-aggressiveness, believe it or not, for martial art, relaxation, breathing, balancing one's psyche. I thought, well, this is great. So I met the trainer. I got to train with him one other time, a couple of times altogether. And that's stuff that I get into. And when I read, I pick up Billy Meier because I'm not into fiction. For all my love of the UFO thing and childhood with whatever was available was, fictional. I don't care for science fiction too much. I didn't even watch Star Trek until the reruns in the 90s or whatever. So for me, the Meier material it's an unspeakable treasure. And whenever I can make time to not do other things, I sit down and I read his books.
No surprise.
That's great.
Okay, Michael, that was very, very, very cool. That's very interesting talking to you and very enlightening, I would say. Let's hope you join us for many more shows if you want to.
I'll be available. We'll find the time. Your time and my time, you guys' time and mine will collide and conspire to do this again, I'm sure. And I honestly value it because I want people in your audience to at least know about this and do what you will if you're interested. So yeah, thank you very, very much.
Again, it was an honor. Seriously. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you both. I'll look forward to sharing this with my audience. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you. And please stay with us for 2 more minutes.
Sure.
Okay?